Everybody. I'm going to continue. We're going to talk about Jenkins and Slack notifications. To introduce myself, I'm Patrick Conley. I'm Principal Software Engineer at Red Hat, and I am the leader of the developer user group, as well as a bunch of other Salesforce-related stuff. And I'm going to feel a little weird about this next slide, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm going to talk about our Discord server in the Slack user group meeting. This is what we're trying to do is bring folks across all of North Carolina, across developers, admins, nonprofits, all that kind of stuff into one location. So not just for a specific user group, but a way to bring us all together and have a better community. Don't feel pressure to join if you don't want to, but we are there if you want to. And I also have to do my duty of letting folks know that Southeast Dreamin', which is a regional conference similar to like Dreamforce or Trailhead DX, but specialized in the Southern United States, is going to be at the end of June, and our call for papers is currently open. So if you want to give a talk at Southeast Dreamin' about anything, I'm sure that we will love to have any talks you want to give. There is the link there. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and I'll gladly talk about what Southeast Dreamin' is and what the presentations are like. So let's jump into what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Jenkins and Slack. For those of you who don't know what Jenkins is a deployment tool, open source project that allows you to essentially script things to do other things. In this case, we're going to talk about how we use Jenkins at Red Hat to do Salesforce deployments, and more specifically, how we use it to make Slack notifications to let people know what is happening with those deployments. Some of those deployments can take, 10, 15 minutes. So that's pretty easy to know, hey, I can just, happened, I can go and check. But some of them can take up to 9 to 12 hours, which is not great for people's memory of reminding to go back and look at a deployment page to see what's happened or if things have failed. So in order to use these, you have to have Jenkins, obviously, with the Slack plugin installed. And then you have to have Slack with the Jenkins app installed. I'm not going to talk about how to do those. I have a link on this, and I will share out a PDF version of this, or have Amber email everybody out but there is some documentation around how to do those two things. Biggest thing is your Slack needs to be marked as a bot for a lot of this stuff to work really well. You don't have to, you can just send messages, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you want to do any of the more rich stuff, it has to be labeled as a bot user. And that is also in the documentation for the Slack plugin. So if we wanted to do just the simplest of things, we can just use the send Slack command. You put in your channel, you put in your message, and you get what you're seeing here. This is what I would say useful for kind of just one-off things. If you have a job that runs and you don't care about whether it was successful, whether it passed or failed, it was just a thing that happened, you can use this to just send that notification. It's kind of be our building blocks for the rest of what we're going to talk about. But if you want to get a little bit more complicated, you can talk about threading. This send Slack message here, our function, gives a response, and then we can send it to that thread. So that will allow you to do everything that you're supposed to do in Slack, which is do threads and not just have tons of messages. The big thing here is that you are using the thread ID, and then that will pass it along and put it in line with the rest of the messages. If you want to get super crazy, we can talk about BlockKit, which is what Amber was alluding to as one of the modules you can do. BlockKit, and I will open this up here, is a way to format your messages. It is the UI framework for Slack. You can do lots of stuff in here. And what I found the most useful is, where did it go? Yeah, here it is, the block kit builder. You can take this, if it'll actually load, and you can build out your blocks, and this is what will show up in your Slack. So you have lots of opportunities for lots of different stuff. For us, we are using specifically the button object, which goes into the actions, and that allows us to click through the Slack to view the job. If you're not familiar with Jenkins uses a programming language called Groovy, and this is a lot of underpinning work that you have to do to make it work. You can I think you can do just generating the JSON data that is in this block kit builder, but the better way to do it is to use Groovy's typed language to generate a bunch of stuff. So in here, I'm creating a couple of classes, a text, a header, a button, and an action, and giving them some default stuff. And then we set up our actions section with a new button that has the text, which is view job, and then the URL, which is the build URL for this job. And when you click on that button, it will open up in your browser directly to that build. And then we say what our blocks are. We are creating a header block, which has the title of our message, so deploying to dev in this instance. And then our actions, which could be this button and then any of the other actions that the block kit supports. And then we just send it to the Slack. Now we can build upon that. And you may have seen at the bottom of that previous one, we had a little reaction emoji, or whatever they called it. In the actual code, they call them just reactions. So we can send our message, and similar to how we did with our threads, we'll take that Slack response, we will add a reaction, and in this case, I have a spinner, which is a custom emoji or custom reaction that is on there. And I find these useful for dealing with long-term jobs, as well as reporting statuses on things. So in this case, we've got deploying to dev job. Takes about, like I said, about 10-15 minutes to run. So while that is running, we have this reaction spinner that happens. In this case, I'm pretending, so we're doing a sleep for 30 seconds. And then once that is completed, we remove the spinner, and then we'll add the thumbs up reaction. You can do kind of whatever you want. Some of our jobs have a green check mark to say, hey, it's done. Others use a red X or the stop sign to say, hey, there was a problem. And then as you can see here, we've got the green check mark for this one was successful. And then we have another example of a job that was not successful. So we have a red X, and then our job puts more information into a thread as to why it failed and how it failed. So you can see this was our test job. This ran for, I think it was about 9 hours to run. So that's not a great thing for folks to have to sit there and constantly look back and forth at the page. So we have it in here, and the job failed. So we added a reaction of an X, and then the job puts in the test failure information in here. One of the things that we found really useful for putting this Jenkins information in here, especially versus just having Jenkins like send an email, is that here you can do the rest of the stuff that Slack lets you do. You can mention the person who maybe wrote these tests to be like, hey, your test failed, you need to fix this. Or you can create tasks inside of Slack to handle things that are maybe related to the deployment. Like, hey, the dev job passed. In the thread, say, hey, Alice, we're ready for the QA push. Can you go ahead and start that? Or, hey, we're ready for communication for the fact that the prod push is getting ready to start. Mention somebody in there, and then you can do that. you can add, again, you can come back here and edit these jobs or edit this message if you wanted to. There's more documentation in the Slack message thing in GitHub, and I forgot the module. Thank you. Module name that you can edit this job. So if you wanted to, if it was successful, you could add another button here that said something like push to dev or push to QA, push to prod, view in prod if you're doing a quick deploy that has a staged deployment in it. And that way you can make it more useful for your users. Instead of having to bounce around out of multiple systems, they can just go straight from Slack. So let's take a look at this a little bit in actual usage. So I'm going to kind of breeze over this. There's going to be a lot of code in here. I will share the code that I have later today. I didn't get the code deployed to Git, but I'll show a link. And again, we'll get Amber to share out the slide deck as well as all the links. But in our Jenkins, we try to do everything as typed as possible. So we import the Slack response. And then later on down the line, we have all of that boilerplate stuff in here to have all the classes. And then we have our original thread. Now, the reason this is important is our jobs are over several different steps. Jenkins lets you do stages, is what they're called. And so we have a stage that checks out Git. We have a stage that waits for dev to be available. In this case, this job is waiting because our dev test job is currently running. So you can't have two deployments going on at the same time. So we're waiting for one to finish before we start the next one. Then we have some prepare, configure, deploy, our quality analysis stuff, and then the post actions. So because those happen over multiple different stages, we have a variable here called original thread that is used across all the stages to be able to do these messages. So that way we know where the original message that we sent goes out. So here we have, if we're deploying, we're going to set the original thread. We're going to send a message that says we're deploying, and then we're going to add our spinner emoji. And then from there, we have similar stuff. If it was successful, we remove the spinner and add a check. If it was aborted, we add the stop emoji. If we failed, we do our markdown for the message. And then we remove the action and add a check, or add the X. And we can see that all we do here is in the rest of our script, we just say that we're deploying, we're pushing to dev, and then we set pass in the thread ID. Currently, this thread ID in this code isn't used. We're just using that original thread. I do have some code that I'm working on to use that thread ID, which is important if your job doesn't. Some of the job types are fail with this def in place, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But know that I will again have some different code that'll go in the repo if your job does fail using that global variable. And then we just essentially call each part of the steps. We call what we're doing, and then or the failed message, and then we have at the very bottom notify that it was aborted, that it was successful, or that it failed, and then we take those messages and pass it off to the Slack. We do a very similar thing with our test, and again we have the different stages, and then Slack is or Zoom has decided to be in the wrong spot. We do again the same thing where we have the notify, and then the only difference between this is that we kind of pull out some of this information, pass it to the failure message, and we do format it as markdown before we get it, so that the way we get that nice formatted section of code here instead of it being in a regular non-monospaced font, which a lot of these test failures look better as a monospaced font. So we put that in a big code markdown bucket. Again, I haven't got it updated yet because I was, like Amber said, updating slides during the intro section. So they will eventually land here into this Jenkins directory for an example of all the code that I've shown here, as well as some more. For some reason, and I have not figured it out yet, sometimes using a global variable works, like I showed you in those two, the dev and dev test jobs, but sometimes it doesn't, and it will literally just fail to run, explodes, and leaves a char in the ground, which is happening for our deployment job. And I have spent the past week trying to figure out why and how to fix that. So I'm going to put that into here, as well as eventually we'll probably write a blog post, which I'll have Amber share out when it's written, to kind of deep dive for those who really care about Jenkins and really nasty underpinnings of some modules, which is probably more than most people care about. But I will post my findings there as well. Any questions about any of what I went over?